Welcome to the very first episode of PTSD Stories. So this channel is dedicated to telling our stories, telling the stories of veterans, first responders, and what it is that we go through. One of the things that I've come across recently, and I haven't actually read this book, and I really should because this quote's awesome. And it's, as long as we remember a person, they're not really gone. Their thoughts, their feelings, their memories, they become part of us. And that's Justin Cronin, and the book is called The 12. So I'm going to read that, and I'll actually share that with you guys. So as we get into this, this station, this channel, whatever you want to call it, I wanted to put this together because in my life, I've come across the families of some amazing people. I know the family of an SR-71 pilot. I know the family of some Green Berets. I know the families of Medal of Honor winners. Most of the people, I actually haven't met the real heroes, the people that the stories are about myself. For me, I have to hear the stories from their family and from history. One of the people that does a great job of letting this information go out is the Fat Electrician. The Fat Files. He's got quite a YouTube channel, and he puts out some great information on some of history's greatest heroes that people really don't know the stories about. So I watch a lot of that stuff, and he's been an inspiration to me for starting this. And I'll tell you, I have tried to tell my story. I have recorded my video 100 times, and I've deleted it 100 times. It's very, very hard to tell our stories for those of us who've lived some of these lives. And it doesn't matter if you've been a firefighter or a cop for 20, 30 years, the experiences that you've had, the stories that you've had, they should be shared. People need to know what it is that you go through and what it is that we go through. And as veterans, I've been on several combat deployments. I've lived a fairly interesting life to some extent, not nearly as interesting as a lot of the people that are out there, but my story should be told. And really one of my motivations for this was a few years back, I lost my grandfather, and he never talked about his story. You couldn't drag it out of him. He really did not like to talk about his experience in World War II and what it was that he did, what it was that he experienced. So he spoke to me about it once. And now that he's gone, I think his story needs to be told, because he's one of those guys where he wasn't a gunfighter. He didn't go in with the Rangers or, the first wave at Normandy or anything like that. His story is, in some ways, is as horrific, if not more. Well, here we go. It's going to be hard. So back in the 80s, I was very young, very, very young, too young to drive, very, very much too young to drive. And I was staying with my grandparents, and my grandfather was a very kind, very gentle man. I never once heard him swear, not in his entire life. He wasn't a drinker. He wasn't a smoker. He was the kind of guy that, he never even broke wind in front of my grandmother, or in front of anybody for that matter. If you didn't know better, you'd think the man never farted. That's just who he was. He was just one of those real decent, real nice guys who he lived a quiet life. And if you didn't know his story, you would never guess who or what he was. So one day, it was in the fall. I remember very clearly it was snowing very lightly. And I was the only one staying with them at the time. Sometimes it was just me. Sometimes it was my brothers and sisters with me. But this time I was the only one there, as I recall. So I was downstairs in their basement watching TV, and my grandfather came down, and he said, "Let's go. You're going to go for a ride with me." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "Where are we going?" And he didn't say a word. And so I just got in the car with him, and we drove a couple miles, and we went to this small bar, and I was kind of taken aback because I couldn't imagine it actually, the sign said it was a bar. So I knew what it was, even at my very young age. And so he pulls in, we go inside, and we sit down at the bar. And this man who I had never seen drink, never seen smoke, never heard him swear. I don't even think I ever heard the man raise his voice, for that matter. I mean, again, just a really nice, calm, genteel man. He sat at the bar and he ordered a bottle of whiskey. Not a shot, not a glass, a bottle. And then he sent me to the vending machine with some quarters to get him a pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes. Yeah, again, this is the 80s. Vending machines for cigarettes, that really was a thing. That's not something that Gen Xers make up. Yeah, there were cigarette vending machines. So I go to the vending machine, I pull him out a pack of Lucky Strikes, and I go sit down at the bar with him. And he sat there and he drank and didn't say a word. And then he started to smoke those Lucky Strikes and didn't say a word. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't really sure what was going on. Again, I was pretty young. But he just drank and he drank and he drank. And I don't know how much time passed. I know it was at least enough time to smoke a dozen or so cigarettes. And so as time progressed and time passed, he actually passed over. I was drinking Coca-Cola, and he passed over a little bit of his whiskey in a glass and said, "Drink that." And he said, "Put some Coke in your mouth, drink that, and then chase it with the Coke really fast." And so I did. It's the first time I'd ever had a drink in my life. I'm not going to tell you exactly how young I was, but I was very, very young. Again, it was the 80s. You weren't really checking ages at bars. Nobody cared. And so as I drank that whiskey, and I thought I was going to die, I thought it was the worst thing that I'd ever had, the worst thing that I'd ever experienced. I turned to my grandfather and just looked at him, and he drank some more. And finally, after what seemed to be an eternity, this very smoky bar, not something I was used to, he turned to me and said, 40 years ago, today was my last one. And then nothing. And again, it seemed like an eternity. And I said, "What do you mean your last one?" And again, another long pause. And he said, "He was the last person I dug up." And I was really perplexed. It's like, I didn't understand dug up. And then he opened up with tears in his eyes. This kind, gentle man told me the story of what he did in World War II. He was a CB. And for those of you who don't know, CBs mean it's construction battalion. And he was a heavy equipment operator. He ran bulldozers. And he was at Gold Beach during the D-Day invasion. And again, he didn't go in with the frontline troops. That wasn't his job. His job was to move dirt, move equipment. But after the initial days of the battle, the bodies that were left on the beach really started to smell. And other young men were coming ashore, people that weren't there for the initial invasion. So somebody decided that the bodies needed to be buried. And at that time, we had only moved in very, very short distance inland. We were fighting the hedgerows. There was, substantial German resistance at the time. And so we didn't even know for sure that we were going to be able to maintain the beachhead. We didn't know for sure that the Germans weren't going to launch a counteroffensive and push us back into the sea. So he was given the order to start burying bodies with his bulldozer. And so he did. He started digging big trenches, and then he pushed the bodies of young American soldiers into the trenches that he dug and then covered them with the sand. And he pushed them as close to the seawall as he could, getting them away from the incoming tide as much as he could. And then he did other things for a while, for a few days. And once we had moved inland far enough and we knew that we could maintain where we were, it was decided, the bodies kept coming up. It's sand. It's the ocean. The bodies kept coming up. Not all of them, but some of them, they would come up to the surface. And so the decision was made that the bodies needed to be exhumed and then reburied inland. So again, this kind, sweet, gentle man was forced to use his bulldozer to dig up the bodies of dead American GIs. And then once he got them dug up, other people would load them onto trucks, and he moved his dozer up, and he and a bunch of other Seabees, they dug up mass graves, and they reburied the bodies. Now, he wasn't involved in the final cemeteries like the Normandy cemeteries and things like that. He was gone at that point. After he was done doing that job, the Navy decided that they needed more equipment operators in the Pacific. So he and a few other guys were transferred to the Pacific Theater. And the fighting continued in the Pacific after the Normandy invasion. And so he did the same job over and over and over again. Burying bodies in the sand, digging them up, moving them inland, burying bodies in the sand, digging them up so that they could be evacuated out. At that time, again, we didn't know that we were going to win the war for sure. So a lot of the graves, I mean, they're still there in some cases. The bodies of dead service members are there, and many of them were buried by my grandfather. It's hard for anybody alive today. And again, I'm a combat soldier. I've been deployed to combat multiple times. I've seen people get hit by IEDs in front of me. I had bullets flinging around me. I can't imagine what he had to go through. I can't imagine the pain that he had to carry. And one of the worst things about this is I can tell you the story from my perspective as a kid, but it would be better to hear it from him. It would be better to hear his story, his words from his mouth, telling people what happened. This is why those of us who are veterans, we're the most anti-war people out there. We know what it does to other people. We know what it does to us. We don't want other people to live through what we had to live through. We don't want other people to be scarred the way we were scarred, physically, mentally, emotionally. We don't want war. We want peace. And it's been hard for me to sit down and do this, but I think I may be the only person alive that knows this story. And, you know, it needs to be told. People need to understand, we see in the movies, Saving Private Ryan is realistic as you can get in a movie. It's loud, there's splashes, there's explosions, they have the cameras vibrating, so you get the you get the feel of what it was like, the disorientation and the horror of it. But nobody does stories. Nobody makes movies about the guys who repair the roads. Nobody makes stories about the guys who bury the bodies. And, it's just as horrific for them, if not more, than the guys who stormed the beaches. So, after he had drunk himself into a stupor to the point where he could barely stand, we go out to the car and he has me drive. And again, I'm really, really young at this point. I'd never driven a car before. And this was a really, really big car. It was one of those land boats from the 80s. It was a big Mercury. Very difficult car to drive, even if you're a skilled driver. I mean, the thing rocked all over the road. The brakes were terrible. It had the turning radius of a battleship. So I'm fighting through all of that late at night, driving him home. And then a few years later, when I was older and I had been in high school and I was about to join the Army myself, and I talked to him about that night, and he didn't say a word. I talked for a few minutes and he just got up and left. He never, ever once spoke about that again. So when I joined the Army, it was, most people didn't know I had enlisted until weeks, maybe most of them days before I actually shipped off to basic training. And so I'm at the airport. It's Boise, Idaho. And, my parents were there. My girlfriend was there. And everybody had left. And I'm getting on the plane. And as I'm standing in line, my grandfather walks up to me. Again, this is the 80s. There's no TSA. You didn't have to have a ticket to get to the gate. He walks up to me and puts his arms around me and said, "I wish it didn't have to be you, but someone has to do it." He's right. Somebody has to do these jobs. Somebody has to be soldiers. Somebody has to be sailors, airmen, Marines, cops, firefighters. Society can't live without hard men doing hard things and doing unspeakable things that most people can't imagine. It stays with us forever. It stains our souls. After it's been done, years after you're no longer doing that work, you still don't get to be who you used to be. It's not fair that some of us have to do that. And the thing is none of us are looking for sympathy. Most of us don't look for accolades. We don't care about the awards we've been given. I mean, hell, I've got a shadow box behind me. My kids had that made for me. If they hadn't done that, that stuff would be sitting in a closet somewhere. But we have to do the job. Somebody has to. So now I live a life where I carry some of these things with me. And I don't feel sorry for myself. My wife has asked me many times, now that you're here, in pain all the time. I'm 50 years old and I've got the body of an 80-year-old. I'm not overweight by any stretch of the imagination. I don't do a lot of things that are bad for my body. It's not like I do drugs or drink excessively or anything like that. But my body's torn up. But every time she asks that, or anytime anybody asks me that, knowing what you know now, being where you are now, would you do it again? And the answer is always yes, because somebody has to do it. If not me, who? So I'm the father of 2 U.S. Army veterans. I only have 2 sons. Both of them served. And now my oldest son is a firefighter and my youngest son is a sheriff's deputy. So even though they didn't go through some of the stuff that I went through or some of the stuff that my grandfather went through, they're still seeing horrific things. You can't be a cop and can't be a firefighter without seeing terrible things. I think my youngest told me that he had to do CPR on somebody on his first week of the job. And that guy didn't survive. So that's the reason this channel is here. At some point, I'll tell my story. I'll be able to make it through. But I want you to be able to tell your stories so that they are not forgotten, so that you are not forgotten. Your children and your grandchildren should not have to tell your stories. You should be able to tell your stories. And we also want you to let the world know how you cope, how you deal with your physical and mental scars, how you make it through the day. Because it's not easy. I know it's not easy. And virtually everybody I know who's in the position that I'm in, who's in the position of my grandfather or other people like that, we don't feel sorry for ourselves. We really don't. We're not happy because of the way we are and what we've become. But it's a choice we made. It's the price that we pay. And we'd all pay it again. I know that my grandfather and the horror that he faced, he would have done it again. He was conscripted. He didn't volunteer. But knowing what he knew, I have no doubt in my mind and in my heart that he would have volunteered to go back and to do it again if it had to be done. So, yeah, it's not easy doing this. And I understand the ask. I understand asking you to either come here in studio and share with me or do it side by side. We can do some sort of live stream or we can do a recording from a remote location. I get it. Like I said, I've done my video 100 times and I've deleted 100 times. But the stories need to be told. People need to know. Because when we forget our history, we repeat it. And we need to understand that diplomacy fails far too often. For those of us who do this work, our job isn't diplomacy. Our job is war. And when the diplomats fail, we don't. I know that's paraphrasing a quote I heard at some point. I don't know where it came from, but yeah, peace isn't our profession. It's the politician's profession, or it should be. War is our profession. Public safety is our profession. And when society fails, when politicians fail, we don't. We stand up and we fight and we take care of each other. So, if you're willing to share your story, please reach out to me on this channel, and we'll set something up so you can share your story. We don't want it to be lost to history. So I'm going to go there before I break down into tears again. So thank you very much, and I hope to hear from you guys soon.